In order not to miss the next story, subscribe to the channel below this video, and don't forget to like it and share your opinions in the comments. Friends, you're going to love today's story. I'm sure you will, so make yourselves comfortable and enjoy listening. We begin. I didn't have a woman until I was 19. At 19, shortly after my birthday, I slept with a woman for the first time. Her name was Luba. She was 2 years older than me. We started dating. Luba was a typical girl of easy virtue. Almost every day she drank, played around, cheated on me with everyone. She didn't even miss my friends. It was a ridiculous affair. At manias, I will attach what kept me near her for almost 3 months. After another, rather cynical cheating on her with my neighbor, I broke off relations with her. There were horrible tantrums on her part, tears, requests, and pleas. But, except for disgust, my first woman did not cause me anything. In general, with difficulty, we parted. Soon after parting with Luba, I met my first love, Olga, a name I changed. Our acquaintance was unnatural and atypical, namely, there is a type of girl who sleeps with everyone. Not of their own free will, but by force. Olga slept with a boy when she was 14. She thought it was love. The boy, naturally, didn't love her. He bragged to a friend. The friend wanted to sleep with her too. They tricked her into it. They bragged to others. They wanted to do it too. In the long run, they tricked and threatened her and forced her to sleep with the rest of the group. Then they got fed up with Olga and handed her over to another company. And she began to go around. And it went on like that for 2 years. By that time, Malwa, her trustworthiness, had spread far beyond her company. Almost our whole little town knew about her. My friend and I got to know her. We got to know her, invited her to my house, and slept with her, both of us. We didn't even talk her into it. Soon my friend went back to his girlfriend and Olga, and I stayed alone with her all night. And it happened that night. You won't believe it, but that night we fell in love with each other. Yeah, I knew she was a whore. I knew our love was ridiculous. I knew it couldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. But love is love. We fell in love, that's all. And nothing else mattered. At first everyone laughed at me, made fun of me. Her former lovers stepped up, looking for meetings with her. But we somehow fought it. We loved each other madly. We decided to get married and have children. We spent 9 happy months together. It hurt me, of course, to remember her past. It hurt to see every day her lovers meeting on the street. I was a romantic back then. But the pain was dulling. Love was taking over. The first betrayal from her side happened 9 months after our first meeting. All this time, Olga lived with me. But then she suddenly reconciled with her parents, and without saying a word to me, she left the city with them all the way to Moscow. Just one day I came home, and she was gone. A month later, I found out that Olia was pregnant. She wrote to me herself. I went to fetch her. I would have gone right away, but I had no money for the trip. It was the early 1990s, and cash was scarce. I had to go from the Far East to the capital. As soon as I earned the money I needed, I went and brought it back. I got a job as a stoker in a boiler house and started working. I forgot my friends. We were expecting a baby. In the spring of 1995, our eldest son was born. 2 months after his birth, we moved to Moscow to Olia's parents. I got a job at a big construction site as a fitter. I was paid well. We were given an apartment in a workers' barrack and were put on a waiting list for capital housing in a 9-story building under construction. In 1996, my daughter was born. In general, life was going well. Everything was going well. The second betrayal was unexpected for me. I was working on a rotational basis in Kashira, but we lived in Kolomna. One day, they let me off work 2 days early. I arrived early in the morning without warning and found her with her lover at our house. She didn't throw a tantrum or ask for forgiveness. Said she was in love. the guy fought in Chechnya. A real man, unlike me, but love is love. I didn't make a scandal either. You can't force me to languish. Why should I return love with scandals? Why should I pay such a price for love? I left on the same day, again on a shift, and never came back. I lived at the station in a dormitory, worked. 2 or 3 weeks later, I heard a rumor that this real man had left her, and she was already living with some officer 10 years older than her. Then I found out that not only our whole corner, but almost the whole unit, which was nearby, had already gone through our apartment. I got tired of putting up with it, and I filed for divorce. We made a deal with Olga. She kept her son in our apartment, and I left with my daughter to my mother in the Far East. Olga came to stay with our daughter after 6 months. Her apartment was taken away from her. It was a departmental property, and her parents didn't want to let her in. My mother, in turn, flatly refused to let Olga in. In short, I gave in to her pleas and promises of repentance. By hook or by crook, I managed to get an apartment in a boarded-up barrack. We started to live together again, but something inside me was already broken. All the time, there was some pain in my soul. I was already weighed down by our life together. But my children, my family, my wife on maternity leave, I had to live somehow. I got a job again as a stoker in a boiler room, and I began to think about going to university by correspondence. I wanted to work as a journalist, but I didn't even have a high school education at the time. So in parallel with my work in the boiler room, I went to night school. And, knowing that for admission to the journalism department, you need articles from newspapers, a creative competition, I got a job at a newspaper as a freelance correspondent. After my 4th article, the editor suggested that I quit the boiler room and start working at the paper as a staff writer, which I did. I practically graduated with straight A's. In the summer, I went to university. I came back in half a month and found out that Olga had gone out again. In the middle of the night, guys came over in their cars, called her for a ride, made a fuss, and sorted things out with her. At first I drove them away, and then I went back to my mother's place. At first I tried to help Olga, but then I stopped. I stopped after one day I brought in a new door. Ours was kept on the word of honor and the workers, and she was there with a man. Although I told the workers that I would put the door in myself, and they knew that Olga was my wife. In general, these workers must have laughed at me from the bottom of their hearts. I went to my mother, then rented an apartment. One day in the fall, about 2 or 3 months after we broke up, Olga came to see me at work. She told me she was pregnant and had married another man. From that day on, I started to lose my mind, literally. I won't describe how bad it was for me, but after 6 months I was already in a mental hospital. I spent more than 2 months in an insane asylum. Then I was discharged and left the city in order never to see Olga again. I lived in Siberia in Krasnoyarsk region for almost a year. Then I left for Moscow with a friend. And what did you think? Naturally, Olga divorced her husband, took her children, and came to live with me, because she had nowhere else to go. Our 2nd departmental apartment was taken away from her, and we started to live together again in Moscow. Me, her, our 2 children, and her 3rd child. But somehow things didn't work out for us anymore. My work did not work out, there was no harmony in my family, and I was strangled by my resentment towards Olga. We lived like this for a few months, and leaving Olga in the care of her parents, I returned to Krasnoyarsk territory. I worked at a newspaper, studied full-time at university, and then again a metamorphosis. Olga unexpectedly comes to see me, not out of great love, but simply because there were problems with my parents and accommodation. There was nowhere to go with the children in her arms. I was a fool to believe her for the umpteenth time. We tried to live together, but it didn't work out at all. Scandals, swearing, tantrums. Life was a living hell. Something must have broken inside me. And even our 2 children together again could not keep me away. In 2002, in late autumn, Olga and I separated again. I moved back to my hometown in the Far East. It was a turning point. I didn't regret anything. I no longer loved anyone. I no longer wanted anyone. I got a job again as a stoker in a municipal boiler house. They gave me a place to live. I made good money. I had enough to live on. A year later, I went to the university. I reached the 3rd year. I visited my children. Olga was wandering around somewhere. She hadn't been home for 3 weeks by then. The kids were with strangers. I spit on everything and took my 2 kids with me and went to hell. Dropped out of university for good. Soon, Olga had a good time and came with her son to see us with the kids. She asked me to forgive her. She accidentally asked me to forgive her. And once again, I forgave her. Or rather, I did not forgive. I let it go on its own. I didn't believe it either, but I felt sorry for the children. That's how the first 10 years of our life together went. I specifically want to distinguish this period. The 10 ugly years of our life were behind us. I was 29 at that time. Olio was 26, and our children were 9, 8, and 4 years old. We were officially divorced, but we were back together. Getting ahead of myself, I'd like to say that it was as if Olga had been switched. She no longer looked at other men. She was a faithful friend. Exactly a friend. Faithful. Well, what was there to be nervous about? 3 young kids. I gave up on everything. I lived for my kids and my family. I told Olga right away, we'll live together until you go on another binge. I didn't have the illusion anymore. I worked as a stoker, Olga as a janitor. One day I had the idea to open a company. Olga supported it, and we took out several loans. The business went ahead. From 2006 to the present day, the firm had been flourishing. We got a good deal of money, from time to time. On business trips, I even started seeing prostitutes. I'm writing about it on purpose so you don't think I'm a saint. I didn't care about anything. I knew that Olga and I would break up. I just knew. I was tired of playing it by then. The role of the faithful loser husband. I didn't say anything to Olga. Of course. All in all, everything was fine. The children were growing up. The firm was prospering. Olga was a faithful friend and companion in the firm. The firm was run by the 2 of them. But 3 years ago, Olga was diagnosed with cancer. I thought I was going to lose her. It was only then that I realized how much I loved her. So I did everything I could to get Olga out of the afterlife. I was very much afraid of losing her. A miracle happened. Olga recovered. And I promised myself to live only for her. Not to cheat. Not to sleep with prostitutes. To forget all past offenses and live for the sake of my beloved. I forgave her. And I forgot all the bad things. You'd think this would be it. A happy ending. But it wasn't. One winter, 12 to 13, Olga began to drift away from me internally. We started having arguments over nothing, and a lot of time was spent on the internet. We almost stopped sleeping together. I began to be afraid that Olga might take advantage of me again. One day in a confidential conversation I told her, just don't cheat on me, don't do it from under you. If you want a change in sex, new sensations, then let's meet like swingers meet, together, or let's arrange and I don't them. I realized that she hadn't had another man in 10 years. That she was probably bored with me. She said that if she wanted something like that, she would tell me. But she would not cheat. And so, on March 14 of that year, Olga went to a friend until 9 p.m. I let her go. Why not? She came not at 9, but at 12 a.m. She came cheerful and excited. Immediately she lay down and fell asleep. I couldn't sleep. I sat in my room and smelled another man's toilet water. I had my doubts. For the first time in my life, I got into her phone. Found a text message from the cab company. The cab wasn't picking her up from the street where her friend lived, but from a completely different one. In the morning, I picked up Olga Napend. While she was sleepy and not thinking straight, I told her that she had not been to her friend's house, but that she had been seen on such and such a street with a man. Olga admitted that yes, she had met a man. I asked why. What was missing? She said she had wanted to try BDSM for a long time. I asked if she liked it. Olga replied that yes, she did. I congratulated her on these, told her I was leaving. We parted. Olga didn't even begin to ask for forgiveness then. She just went off to work. I trusted her in recent years, especially after she almost died of cancer. I knew her passwords and email accounts. Created them myself at her request, but then I decided to break in. Hacked into her email account, found out she was registered on a dating site. Hacked into her profile. Turned out she had been actively looking for a sadistic lover for 3 months. There was a bunch of virtual correspondence where she was humiliated and put down. It was clear from her that she had been communicating both on the web and on the phone. It took a long time to find Real, because the town was small and there was no one from our town there. But lo and behold, a sadist from our town registered there, and they met, and, in fact, it was after that meeting that I caught them. On this site, she behaved quite actively. She complained that her husband, that is me, she's pretty vanilla. She complained that the subject was eating away at her inside, and she looked at every man, whether he was sadistic or not. Just don't think I'm some kind of prude in this case. I've offered to play BDSM with her myself. I wanted to and liked such fantasies, but to play for a change. She, on the other hand, apparently needed to get into it head first, or she just wanted to do it not with me. I don't know, and it doesn't matter anymore. Now since spring, Olga is like a substitute again. Tantrums, tears. She says she doesn't want anything or anyone but me, trying to please me in everything. I can see that she is very remorseful. Forgives me to forgive and believe for the last time. Except I can't forgive now. Apparently, I've run out of goodbyes. Now look what we have. One firm between the two of us. Loans are $2 million in debt. Older children, students are studying in another city and need to support. Apartment, 2 dogs, a car, a bunch of stuff together. I am 39, Olga is 36, my kids are 18, 17, 14. And we have 20 years of life together behind us. And we have to give it all up, because I can't live with her anymore. Psychologically, I can't live with her anymore. I'm sick of being cheated on. For the last 10 years, I thought I'd gotten over it. But no. Now we are in the process of divorce. As soon as I've sorted out the company and the loans in 2 months, I'll leave. I'll leave everything to her. I'm going nowhere. No apartment, no family. I probably won't be able to go anywhere. Such a ridiculous life. I didn't write this to get advice. Advice I do not need, I decided myself. I'm writing to the fact that there is a popular belief that the girls of easy virtue are faithful wives. They say they've been through fire and water and won't go out anymore. No, it's not like that. And my life is an example of that. That's why I say don't marry girls of easy virtue. Look for normal women. I'm not saying this out of spite, I'm just warning the young. Respectfully. Friends, dear listeners, you complain to me that the stories are too negative, too tragic. I want something fun, and this case is one of those. Honestly, I confess I laughed. Probably every 5 sentences. True, I wrote down this story for a very long time, about an hour. It took me about an hour. How long did it take? 19.5 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. The story itself. But in the end, I have a great mood, and I hope you do too. And I don't want to resort to uncensored, but I would like to somehow characterize the author of the main character. I can't say it out loud, I'll just give you a hint. It's a word that starts with Q, ends with cold. So there you go. Well, what else can we say about him? I mean, really, it's a total Alice. I don't even believe the story is real. I mean, seriously. Just noticed some bloopers. The author, when he wrote it, apparently didn't care too much about the details. And the first time I teared up right in my voice was when the author was writing. In 1996, my daughter was born. All in all, life was going normally. Everything was good. Yes, exactly everything was good. Before that, all was good. Even now, I can't. I'm sorry. And the next thing I couldn't bring myself to say with a serious face was that my wife had registered on a site for some pervert. And then, but lo and behold, a sadist from our town had registered. That sounds really weird. I don't know, maybe it's funny to me alone, but for some reason I imagined it so peculiarly in my head that this is a certain town, roughly 1,000 people. And there's only one sadist there. And she was sitting there, waiting for him to check in. And then he finally checked in. All in all, there were quite a few moments to laugh at, to lift the spirits. I really hope that you too enjoyed listening to this story, laughed at himself there, and remained in good spirits after listening. If you like these stories, they are on the internet. You can find them. Write in the comments. I'll look it up. Why not? Well, do not always take everything seriously, really. Not always to talk about life and so on. And here it is necessary to rest.